You can have a seat. You can state your first and last name and spell both.
My first name is Derek, P-E-R-E-K, last name Selden, S-E-L-D-E-N.
You can proceed, counsel.
Good morning, Officer Selden. Thank you for being here. Can you please tell me a little bit about what you do for work?
Notice how the prosecution starts by establishing the officer's credentials and tenure. Even though he's only been on the force since 2020, they want to paint him as a seasoned professional before he dives into the messy details of the pursuit.
I'm a police officer at the Lansing Police Department. I've been employed with them since beginning of 2020.
Okay, and were you working on the date of March 23rd, 2025?
I was.
And did you have any contact with the defendant on that day?
I did.
Can you tell me a little bit about that, how that started?
I was working road patrol for
Okay.
the Lansing Police Department on that day in the evening. And I observed a white vehicle, which I ultimately ended up attempting to stop for a traffic stop. The vehicle did not stop until eventually later did. And that's where I made contact with the defendant.
Okay, can you tell me what the traffic stop was initially for? Do you recall?
The vehicle initially got my attention as it appeared to have no plate. So I started trying to catch up to it to confirm this because it was a white vehicle, ended up having a white plate. So the glare from it made it look like it wasn't there.
Okay.
But while I was trying to catch up to it, I noticed the vehicle started taking a series of right turns, trying to stay out of my sight, essentially. And as I got closer, the vehicle was increasing its speed more east and west, just south of it, which is Malcolm.
Mm-hmm.
That's the road I initially saw the vehicle on. And as I came up to it, it took a southbound turn, and then another right-hand turn to head back west. So as we're coming back up to Pennsylvania, now that we're heading west, it made a right turn. As I made the same turn a few seconds later, there's two vehicles in the travel lane stopped at a red light, and I observed the vehicle now getting on the on-ramp, which told me that this vehicle that I was trying to stop had to go around those vehicles that were stopped at the red light because they were right up at the line of it in order to get onto the ramp where it was. The light was already lit. So at that point, I turned on my overhead lights to safely go through the intersection, start catching up to this vehicle.
Okay, and what were you wearing that day?
I was wearing my full patrol uniform with my badge vest, which says Lansing Police and my
And the car that you were in, was it marked?
It was a fully marked LTV vehicle.
Okay. And so, so you get on the highway following the car, and then what happens?
As I come up the eastbound on ramp, trying to catch up to it, I observed that
When an officer describes lane weaving and shoulder passing, they're trying to establish the danger to the public element required for fleeing and eluding charges. This isn't just about speed. It's about the manifest intent to evade a lawful stop at any cost.
distance in this vehicle greatly increased. The vehicle was moving far, far faster than the pace of traffic.
Okay.
So at that point, I also turned my sirens on to safely navigate through traffic, try to catch up to this vehicle. It took me a little bit to catch up to it. I observed the vehicle then cut across the lanes of I-496 eastbound and take the exit, which leads to 127 northbound.
Okay.
Along this exit, it was one lane. I watched the vehicle pass vehicles on the exit on the shoulder in order to get past them. I continued to try to catch up with my lights and sirens on. And then once we were on 127 northbound after this interchange, to pull over or to stop. Once the light turned green, the vehicle just continued to drive and it went westbound.
Do you remember exactly what you said over the PA speaker?
Not exactly,
Okay.
but it was along the lines of pull over.
Okay. And so did you continue following the vehicle?
I did. At this point, I realized that the vehicle more than likely was not going to stop for me. So once we were westbound on Lake Lansing, I turned my lights and sirens off. So that way, this area is more congested with traffic. So that way I'm not confusing any traffic trying to come through or causing any accidents. And I just stayed behind the vehicle.
Okay, so how did the vehicle eventually pull over then?
We were traveling westbound down Lake Lansing, and I was calling this out on the radio so that way others in my jurisdiction knew. And I was also receiving some updates from dispatch, such as that East Lansing might have been looking for this vehicle. Anyways, westbound down Lake Lansing, once we got up to Larch Street, it just pulled into the gas station at that corner.
Okay, and then what happened next?
That was 2100 North Larch, I believe. It's a mobile gas station attached to Quality Air. It just pulled up to a pump. And so now that the vehicle was actually stopping, I pulled in behind the vehicle and I reactivated my overhead lights in order to reinitiate a stop. The vehicle stayed stopped at this moment. I got out and started initiating a high-risk stop because of the fact that the vehicle was not stopping for me, and some of the information I received from dispatch while traveling to this point, some of my partners, was that the vehicle was possibly being looked for by East Lansing because they recognized the plate and the vehicle description that I had given. And that might have time, but it was more than, like, I'd say the time frame 2 to 3 minutes.
Okay. That's good, thank you. And then at that point, the driver was put under arrest?
Yes.
Okay. One moment, Your Honor. No further questions at this time, Your Honor.
This is supposed to be identifying this witness.
Yes, Your Honor, thank you. I apologize for that. So you place him under arrest. Can you, would you be able to identify the defendant?
Pay attention to the shift here. The defense attorney immediately zeroes in on the officer's lack of experience. Only being on road patrol for a little over a year makes him an easy target for rookie mistake narratives regarding documentation and probable cause.
Yes, I could.
Can you point to him and describe an article of clothing that he's wearing?
You see her right there, wearing white shirt, black tie.
Thank you so much. No further questions now.
Who is the person you're identifying? Because she referred to him as a defendant. What is his name?
So Sotelo,
Are you asking her? You're answering my question? Do you know his name?
Yes.
What's his name?
Sotelo.
Sotelo last name?
Sotelo.
Okay. Cross-examination.
My apologies.
Thank you. You've been an officer for how long?
I was hired by the city of Lansing for the academy in August 2023, and then I started with road patrol in December of 2023. So that puts me at a year and some months.
So you were trained at the academy?
Yes.
You know the importance of note taking?
Yes.
Of course, you know the details matter.
Yes.
So you try to be as accurate as possible.
Yes.
When you first noticed that white SUV that got here, only a turn,
I did not intend that.
you continued to follow.
As I was still trying to catch up. So.
And at that point, you still hadn't activated your overhead lights or your siren.
No, sir.
And once that SUV made the additional right turn, it was so far ahead of you, you still couldn't see the plates.
Correct.
And you eventually, in your report, say you lost complete sight of that SUV, right?
I did.
That was around the time it was getting onto the highway.
Correct.
And I think in your direct testimony, you stated 2 vehicles stopped at light, which told you that the white SUV had to go around.
Correct.
That was an assumption, right?
Suppose.
You didn't see it.
I did not see it.
And you activated your emergency lights as you were getting onto 496 off of Pennsylvania?
Before the intersection.
That ramp goes uphill.
Correct.
And because of the incline, your view of the SUV was obstructed, right?
Correct.
So at the moment you turned on your lights, it's possible that that SUV couldn't see you because of that incline, correct?
Correct.
Once you crested the highway, you could see that SUV again?
I could.
It was far ahead of you.
It was.
Traffic speeds at least 70 miles an hour?
Yes.
You don't know if the driver ever looked in his rear view, do you?
I don't.
You don't have any video, body cam, anything showing him looking back at you?
No.
So to be clear, he never made.
Every time you turn your lights on and off?
I turned them off coming down the on-ramp and then back on when we hit the red light at the end of the on-ramp, and then back off after he still did not stop after turning off the on-ramp onto Lake Hudson.
So you turned them off twice
I turned them off twice.
and on 3 times.
Yes.
You testified previously about this high-risk stop. Indicated that you had your weapon ready. Not directly at an individual, just sort of below the line of sight.
Correct.
And you also testified that there were other officers involved, right?
Correct.
And because this was a high-risk stop, other officers had their guns drawn, right?
Correct.
Not all of them had them at a low ready, isn't that right?
I cannot answer that.
Have you reviewed any body cam or dash cam from that incident?
I reviewed my body cam dash cam from the incident and I wrote the report.
And you say the elapsed time from the time he was ordered out.
The defense is highlighting the inconsistency of the officer's emergency signals. If the lights are going on and off, a savvy lawyer will argue the suspect was confused rather than eluding. It creates reasonable doubt about the suspect's intent to flee.
Yeah.
Especially when you got guns pointed in your direction, right?
Yeah.
Ultimately, he got out of the car.
He did.
He followed every command. He walked backwards to your car with his hands up.
He did.
You successfully cuffed him without him snatching away from you.
Correct.
He didn't throw any punches.
No.
Didn't push.
No.
Didn't kick.
No.
He didn't try to run away.
No.
You weren't injured.
No.
No weapons.
No.
Based on my understanding of your report and reviewing body cam, when you got back to the station, you made a phone call to a person that was in the vehicle with Mr. Sotelo, is that right?
Yes.
And one of the things you wanted to know was how fast that vehicle was traveling, is that right?
Right.
Because you didn't know.
Sotelo's being charged with fleeing and eluding in the 4th degree and resisting and obstructing officers. Today we had testimony from one witness, and that's Officer Selden. Officer Selden did testify that he was performing a traffic stop against the defendant in Lansing, Michigan, Ingham County on the date of March 23rd, 2025. He testified that at first he wasn't certain that there was a plate on the vehicle, but then upon getting closer to the vehicle, did observe the vehicle run a red light as well. The fleeing, to prove fleeing and eluding, the first element is that a police officer was in uniform and was performing his lawful duties. Officer Selden did testify that he was in his police officer uniform and was conducting a traffic stop. He also was in a marked police car. The second element is that the defendant was driving a motor vehicle. Officer Selden's testimony also showed that the defendant was driving a motor vehicle at that time. He did, after a bit of confusion, did eventually identify the driver as the defendant here. The officer ordered the defendant to stop the vehicle. That's the third element. The lights were on. I do believe that the officer also testified that the defendant crossed multiple lanes of traffic to evade him.
You can continue.
Okay. And then fifth would be that the defendant refused to obey the order by trying to flee or avoid being caught. This continued even after the highway. The lights were turned off and then turned back on, and still the defendant refused to pull over for the officer. The officer Selden also testified that after they had gotten off the highway, he had announced on the PA that he needed the vehicle to stop. The vehicle continued to accelerate through the green light forward ahead of Officer Selden, and this all happens after they get off the freeway. And additionally, the defendant is charged with resisting the police officer. The first element that we need to show probable cause of is that the defendant did obstruct or oppose who was a police officer. And
Let me stop you here, because maybe I'm confused. I thought that the questions to the officer was that there was a question posed on cross as to whether or not the defendant got out the car and followed every command. And he said yes.
a minute after. It is over to circuit court. Thank you.
We'd object to the bind over, Judge. At best on this record, we heard that this was a pretextual stop. The only indication of any criminal activity that the officer has alleged was that Mr. Sotelo made a series of right turns. He even further indicated that the alleged speeding that he claimed was the basis for a stop, he never even observed it, didn't know how fast the car was traveling, that he called an occupant of Mr. Sotelo's vehicle to try to ascertain the speed. The law doesn't work like that. You can't work backwards to manufacture a probable cause, Judge. You've heard the testimony, I think more importantly, on the resisting, obstructing, and assault. He told you that officers was on the scene. It was a high-risk stop. They had their guns. At least this officer had his guns in the low ready. That Mr. Sotelo complied with all the instructions. May have taken them 1 minute. But the law allows a reasonable amount of time, especially given the gravity of those circumstances with guns being involved. On that basis, Judge, we'd object to the bind.
Any re-argument?
And for the people, Your Honor.
Let's see, this is a fleeing and eluding on the 4th degree, and then there is a police officer assault, resisting, obstructing.
And there it is. The judge dismisses everything. This is a textbook example of fruit of the poisonous tree. Since the initial stop was deemed illegal, the pursuit and the arrest that followed don't matter in the eyes of the law. The case is dead.
Established. That would have been the burden of the prosecution. But there was some glare from some place that prevented the officer from being able to actually see if there was a plate on an SUV, a white SUV, to which at some point he did get close enough to see that there was a plate. But based on a series of right turns, the officer decides that there's some criminal activity. And so he continues to follow this defendant. The prosecution has made the argument that the defendant ran a light, but that's not what the testimony of the officer says. He said that he assumes that a light was ran. The officer has dash cam, body cam, or should have those things. And he supposedly is following this person because this person has made multiple right turns. I don't know how many right turns have been made, but nonetheless, he's made some right turns, but the officer does not see or somehow misses whether or not this vehicle actually, in fact, ran a red light. And so then the officer gets on the expressway. It was established on the cross-examination that there is some incline or hill as you enter onto the expressway. And so it's possible, based on the officer's response, that he could not, the driver of the SUV would not be able to see the officer activating his lights as he entered onto the expressway. And then by the time he had actually, because you had a right turn and we thought maybe you didn't have a license plate, but now we see that you did have a license plate. There's insufficient evidence as to count 1, police officer fleeing, eluding to a probable cause standard, so that's dismissed. Count 2, police officer assault, resisting, obstructing is also dismissed. I think this is a pretextual stop. I don't think the officer had a reasonable grounds to make a stop in the first place. So both counts are dismissed for lack of probable cause.